Let's return to the basics. What is Bitcoin? We started with what is money. What is Bitcoin? We talked about hard money, inflation, fiat, the history of money, the history of war in the 20th century. And that takes us into the 21st century. What is Bitcoin?
Bitcoin is a software, and it's a distributed software to operate a peer-to-peer network between members who are all equal on the network. They're all peers. And what this software does is that it allows you to operate a payment network between those peers. And that payment network has its own currency. And that seems like, just a simple software game. But the reason this is such a big deal is I believe Bitcoin is the most advanced form of money ever invented. And the reason for that comes from two properties that this network has. The first one is that the currency is the hardest money ever invented. It's the money whose supply is the most resistant to inflation. It's the first monetary asset that we've ever invented that is guaranteed to be fixed in its supply, that cannot be increased beyond a certain number. So there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins. And that's a qualitative leap forward in our technologies of money. All of our monies leak, essentially, because people can always make more and more and more of them. The best money is the one that leaks the least, which is gold, because it only leaks 1.5%. In other words, your share of the gold stock is diluted by 1.5% every year. Ideally, you'd like it to be zero. Bitcoin is currently at around 1.8%, headed towards zero. So it's the first money that we've ever had that goes to zero in terms of terminal supply. So there'll never be more than 21 million Bitcoin. And I think that's a huge deal because, as I said earlier, money is always whatever is the hardest to make. And now Bitcoin is the hardest thing to make. And then the second property, which is extremely important as well, is the fact that it operates without the need to trust in anybody. It doesn't have a party that is in charge of it. It doesn't have a central authority that can, it's, as I said, it's peer-to-peer. So it only has users. It doesn't have any admins. There's no authority in charge of Bitcoin that can take your Bitcoin, that can stop you from using Bitcoin, that can change the rules of Bitcoin. They can't make more of it. So it's fixed. It's available for anybody in the world. It's the hardest money ever invented. And it is absolutely, I think, an enormously significant invention because if you read the fiat standard and the Bitcoin standard as well, you'll see my perspective for why I think a very large number of problems in the world are caused by easy money, are caused by inflation, and caused by government having access to essentially an infinite recourse to people's wealth. And I think Bitcoin fixes this because it allows us to have money that has the salability of gold across time, meaning it holds its value across time like gold, but much better than gold. But also it is similar to fiat in that fiat can travel quickly, but Bitcoin can travel even faster than fiat. So it combines gold's salability across time with fiat's salability across space in one immutable package that nobody can change and nobody can control.
Can you define the word salability?
Salability is the essential property of money. It's the ability of a good to be sold easily on the market, specifically to be sold without much loss in its value. So houses are great for living in, but they're not very saleable. If you want to sell a house, you can't just click a button and sell a house and have a giant market of people buying houses from you. You need to find somebody who wants the exact house that you have with the exact specifications that you have. And because, houses are not identical, there's no liquid giant market for people to just buy and sell identical houses from. So gold, for instance, has good salability as money because it's a liquid good, it's uniform, and people are always buying it. Fiat dollars have great sellability because everybody's always buying and exchanging dollars for other goods. So if you have a $100 bill, you can easily get rid of it and you'll get $100 worth of stuff for it. If you have $100 worth of stuff, it's harder to get rid of it. If you have $100 worth of phone, it's not as easy to spend it as a $100 bill. That's salability.
What do you mean that Bitcoin, I understand that Bitcoin has the sellability of gold across time,
Better, even, yeah.
Better, yes, like on the order or whatever. And then it has the scalability of fiat across space. What does that mean?
So if you remember when you asked me what is the advantage of fiat, what is the advantage it offers us, it's cheaper to move fiat across space than it is to move gold. With the current fiat monetary system, for all of its flaws, you can send money. I could send money from my bank account in the US to a bank account in China in a couple of days, or in Britain, in France, in a day or two, which is, much faster than you could do with gold and much cheaper than you could do with gold. But in reality, with fiat, the reason Bitcoin improves on that is that with Bitcoin, you're actually you're sending final settlement in a couple of hours. So you send the Bitcoin transaction, you get 6 confirmations in an hour. You get about 12 confirmations in 2 hours on average. With 12 confirmations, you're pretty definitely clearly safe on this. So within a couple of hours, you could send $1 billion across the ocean and have final settlement on them. It's not just that you've sent a credit obligation that's going to need weeks and months to settle, which is the case with fiat. So it is faster than fiat, effectively. So it's harder than gold and faster than fiat. That's a good way of putting it.
One other aspect of Bitcoin I have to ask, to me on a human level, it's fascinating, is it was founded by Satoshi Nakamoto, an anonymous founder. There's no leader. So that's another aspect of the decentralization. It's leaderless.
Yeah.
So unfortunately, it's not a monarchy.
Fortunately.
Or fortunately, yes. Who is Satoshi Nakamoto, do you think? And first of all, is it you?
It definitely is not me. I don't know who it is.
If it was, would you tell me? It's a trick question.
I know, trick question. But I mean, everybody who knows me knows I can't really code. So
you would say that even if you could. But
that's true.
Do you think it's one person? Do you think it's multiple people? Is it interesting to you? Do you think it's fundamental to the coin itself, to not the coin, the entirety of the concept, that its founder is anonymous? And how much guts do you think it takes if it's one person to just walk away from so much money?
I've considered all these questions many times. It's very hard to formulate a definitive answer to all of them. I don't know who it is, and I don't know why he or them or she are not spending the coins that they most likely have. I think what really matters in Bitcoin about Satoshi is the fact that he's not there. And this is what's truly astonishing about it. The most important fact in Bitcoin is the fact that the creator has disappeared and the thing has continued to operate now for almost 12 years without him being there, or 11 years, I think it's been since he's left. And this is really the most important thing. And, maybe he died or she died, or they got into an accident on a road trip or whatever. And that's why they haven't accessed their coins. Maybe they're incapacitated for some reason. But whatever reason it is, I really think it's fate or serendipity that is giving us this very vital, very, very, very vital building ingredient in Bitcoin, which no other digital currency would ever recreate, which is that, because it was the first, it was the one that was able to establish the first mover advantage and get all of the people who were interested in the technology to get into it. And so that's an enormous advantage. But, the cherry on top, or what made the whole thing really function well, is the fact that the guy who made it disappeared. And that it continued to operate, which is just a clear illustration that this is a network with no admins. And I'm tempted to think that they're incapacitated in some way, probably dead or gone, because I can't believe I don't believe any human being would have this level of self-control to not want to meddle with their invention so much. Even if they might have had the self-control to mine the first 1 million coins to get the network going and then throw away the coins or send them to an address that they don't have the key to, because they really just wanted the network to take off. They may have no access to the coins, and that's why they can't move them. I could see that happening, but I find it harder to believe that they would resist the temptation to mess with the network.
It's funny. I find that the founders of ideas are often principled and have the integrity that the eventual users of those ideas don't fully have. I tend to, we have the kind of cynical view, power corrupts, absolute power corrupts absolutely. And we tend to, in our mind, generalize that all humans are corruptible. And perhaps that's true to some degree, but I think that some people are more corruptible than others. And I find that there is, I like to think that Satoshi Nakamoto is out there and, just like George Washington chose to walk away. And it's a principle. And the principle is more powerful than the financial reward or any of those kinds of things. It's a principle that stands for freedom. And there's a lot of people throughout history, even recent history, that are willing to die for these principles or live a life full of suffering and sacrifice because they're still living a life of principle and choosing that day after day after day. So, there's power to that. Money, what's the worth of money in the end? In terms of just personal financial gain versus knowing how much positive impact there is. So the person that chooses to walk away like that, I think, is the same kind of person that chooses to live by that principle. You have people like that, in Grigori Grisha Perelman in mathematics, who turned down the Fields Medal because he was...
Yeah, that's a medal, not $50 billion of Bitcoin.
Well,
No, I know, I'm joking.
Well, that's actually an interesting, just a brief comment. When people talk about Bitcoin in the cryptocurrency space, it's often mixed up financial interest and ideas. And I think those are often correlated, but that good feeling you get when you win or you, number go up, or you just somebody, I found $20 on the street the other day, and just that feeling of just like, ooh, like more money, that positive feeling, that's correlated, but it is distinct from the power of the idea to change a world, to change the world for the better, to alleviate. It's like Alex Gladstein in the case of Bitcoin, that decrease the amount of suffering in the world because of the authoritarian regimes. And just because your number goes up, like that gambling feeling of like, yes, this is good. And short-term number go up. There's a long-term number go up, that's more like investment and so on. And there's a short-term number go up, that's just a good feeling that you have to, in your mind, keep those distinct from the power of the idea to transform the world. And if you focus on the power of the idea, maybe a billion or billions of dollars don't matter as much. At least that's what I would like to believe.
Perhaps, but what matters ultimately is that the thing works without him. The thing's worked for 11 years without him. And I think this is the really important thing. If they had stuck around for whatever reason and they had continued to meddle with it, it's not clear to me how decentralized it could have been. This is the problem with the other currencies. It's like, how do you lose control of the Frankenstein that you've created? The only way that this Frankenstein continues to survive is if the person in charge of it continues to feed it. And so it continues to be yours. And that's the problem with all the other digital currencies. If you've heard about any of the other 16,000 digital currencies out there, you've only heard about it because there's a small group of people behind it that are working on it, that are promoting it. And that's why, and I think, Michael Saylor's discussion with you was a magnificent illustration of the difference between Bitcoin and altcoins, in that they are securities. And I think he makes a very compelling, brilliant case for why this makes them categorically different from Bitcoin. Bitcoin, you're buying property.
I think he mentioned he's a huge fan of Dogecoin, but I might be misremembering.
You are misremembering.
Okay, I need to. Maybe I'm quoting him out of context.